Hi guys, Jeff Shoemaker, Remax Agility here in our Aldi office. Today I'm coming at you with our fourth step in our home buying process videos that we're doing. We're going to go over a lot in this video. Hopefully we can keep it condensed down to a short enough time that you'll make use of it and won't get bored listening to me talk. We're going to go over some basic things in our market. So in making offers in Northern Virginia, we're in a hyper competitive market. There's very little inventory and a lot of price brackets. If you're not really competitive, you're going to be writing a lot of offers and getting a lot of practice making offers on houses. Hopefully with this video and some basic tips, you'll be able to hopefully get the first one you write on, or at least cut it down so that you can be more competitive and do a better job. As a listing agent, there are a lot of times I see offers come in and I cannot believe the way that they're written. Even if you've communicated to the other agent that you have multiple offers, they're probably going to go above list. You'd appreciate not having a lot of contingencies, so you don't have to do a lot of negotiating, and they will still send you something with every contingency known to mankind, an offer below list, and asking for seller subsidies, the seller to pay pest inspection and to pay other inspections, and to pay for a home warranty, where the seller ends up, being asked to pay, 14, 15, 20 grand in fees. They're not going to accept it, especially if you have 10 other offers and those offers are competitive, don't have those contingencies, and the seller net is much higher. So let's go over some of those basic things. The first step is you have to decide what kind of offer you're going to make. So if you're testing the water, you're not really super serious about this house, you have time, I get it. Make an offer where you can try to get something for a little bit less. But if you're really crunched on time, you have a home that you're selling and you have to be out, or you're moving to the area, or you have school starting soon, and it's really important that your kids are in school by that time in that particular school district, you need to know that you're making a really competitive offer. And so you got to pull out all the stops. And so we're going to talk about that. You want to try to figure out what your fair market value is. And so when you're writing an offer and you're making an offer, if it gets accepted and you close, fair market value is really what a given buyer in any given market is willing to pay for that property. And if the property is sought after and there's very limited inventory, it may go for more than the last comps that have sold in the past 60 days. But if you're in a market where the days on market are 40, 50, 60 days, and there's not a lot of movement and things are listed, a lot of things have been withdrawn or canceled, in those situations, then fair market value might be less than what they previously sold for. So it really depends on determining what that number is, looking at comparable sales, comparable listings, withdrawals, expireds, things like that. Your agent can be a great help to you doing that. They'll be able to pull those things out of the MLS and kind of have a quick little meeting with you before making your offer so you can figure out what that number is. If you have to go fairly high above the past solds, then you may have a problem with appraisal later and end up not being able to get it appraised. And if you're a buyer not willing to pay the difference and the seller's not willing to come down on price, you're in a situation where your deal's probably going to wind up not closing and you're going to start all over. So have conversations, figure out what those are, see how flexible the seller is, make sure you know what the situation is and how realistic everybody is. That really gets to the next part, is the seller realistic? And so realistic is a broad description. If a seller doesn't really need to move out or sell in the next year, they may not want to take much less than where they're at. If they're aggressive or they want to move or they're motivated, then they may be willing to make more concessions and be a little bit more competitive on what they offer for their sale. So the next thing is are you realistic? So I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with buyers and the market is super hot, there's no inventory, and on the first, second, third, or fourth offer, they want to put tons of contingencies, ask for tons of money off, or make lowball offers. Because when you work for a buyer as a buyer's agent, you do owe them a fiduciary duty of obedience and loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable due care and due diligence. And so if they tell you to write the offer that way, and you've been hired to them, have an agency agreement, you have to make that offer. And sometimes people don't listen to you as an agent. Of course, you wish they would. Now, eventually they do. If it turns out that you're right and they're not able to get those things accepted, they'll go back to the drawing board and start listening to you. But if you're going to look at 10 or 20 houses and you're going to make 5 or 6 offers, you'll end up finding out if the market's going up in value that the house that you really liked 60 days ago, if you're at the top of your price range in your mortgage or what you're approved for, 60 days later, you may not even be able to approve for that property for that higher price. And so you're really in a situation where because of not making aggressive enough offers, you're in a situation where you end up having to lower your price point that you would have had months before looking at houses. And so you end up buying less house. And usually if you've written 3 or 4 offers, a lot of times the first house that you made the offer on is the house that was the dream house and you missed it. And then every house after that becomes the one that you compare it to. So don't let that happen to you. Get aggressive early on. Make sure you're realistic as a buyer. The next thing you want to look at is what are the other costs you're willing to pay in your contract in the transaction on your offer that you're making. There's a lot of cost involved in buying a property and what you're looking at. With the purchase price, the earnest money that you get back at closing towards closing costs, with who's going to pay the pest inspection, if you're going to have a home warranty and who's paying for it, who chooses it, if there's going to be any seller subsidies as well. It all comes down to what a seller net is. And if the seller's not getting the desired net, they may wait. It doesn't mean they won't get what they want. They may get less than what you offered later. But you have to figure out who's paying those costs and make your offer as such that it's competitive. The next thing you want to talk about is how soon you can close. And so if you have a pre-underwritten approval versus having a pre-approval, you can probably close 7 to 10 days earlier. Closing earlier may or may not be a good thing for a seller. If a seller wants to stay longer because they're finding another property, they're having a property built, then you're in a position where the sooner closing date really may not be as effective a tool to negotiate with them. But if they're trying to move quick and they've lost other offers or they were under contract and now they're going back on the market, having that shorter closing time means it's almost like they never lost the first contract they had, and they may really prefer that number being much shorter than 30 or 40 days is normal. The next thing is do you need a home warranty? Well, it really depends on how the house is, how handy you are, what kind of connections you have. If you're buying an older property, has an older HVAC system or water heater or appliances, you may want a home warranty. So a typical furnace inside of a house, natural gas furnace, the furnace itself has a life expectancy of probably 20 years, compressors probably 10 to 12 years, some a little bit longer, maybe 15, water heater probably 10 to 12 years. And so if everything's kind of at its life expectancy and the service life is pretty much used up, you probably want a home warranty, because I can't tell you the number of houses I've sold within 60 or 100 days. I get a call from a buyer saying that the water heater quit working, or the furnace doesn't work, or the AC doesn't work. Them wondering whether or not by chance, when they said no to the warranty, if you happen to buy it just in case. A lot of my clients, if they don't buy it, I go ahead and just pay for it, because it's really not worth the headache and aggravation later, because even though you did everything you were supposed to do as an agent, they could still wind up not being happy when it's over. And you do want repeat and referral business, so you do what you got to do. The next thing is how much EMD. So the earnest money deposit should be enough to cover at least maybe 1 month's mortgage payment or cost of carrying the property. Typically it's like 1%, whatever the purchase price is, maybe a little bit more. If you want your offer to be more competitive, you may want to put up more to show that you're committed, along with the proof of funds. If you're making a large down payment, to show you have the money available and that you're ready to go. The next thing is finding out if you need to use an expiration or an escalation on your offer. It really depends. If a listing agent tells you they're not presenting till 3 or 4 days from now, it may not be a good idea to put an expiration of tomorrow. They may just not even respond to it, and knowing that you'll probably hold out anyway, they may not respond. Having an escalation may be a great idea if you're in a position where your offer is maybe not as competitive as you would like, and you're not willing to go as far on the first offer. But having an escalation means you'll pay up to X amount over an offer, up to a maximum amount. So if you make an offer of $500,000, you may say that I'll pay $500 over any other competing offer that bests my offer up to $525. So they would still have to show you the other offer that pushes your offer up if you get the contract, but at least this way you know that you've offered everything you could have and you've gotten it for as little as you could have. And if you win, at least you don't feel like you're overpaying, or that the other offer is worth much, much less than your offer. The next thing is what contingency should you have? Well, it depends. There are lots of different contingencies. So you have your standard contingencies for home inspection, for finance, for appraisal. for sale of home, for seller's selection of home. There are a number of different contingencies that are really based on whatever your scenario is. You'll need to talk about all the things that are in your scenario with your agent to make sure that you're using the contingencies that best suit the transaction. There is no perfect number or lack of, or the maximum you should have. It really depends on how competitive you want to be. There are plenty of offers in our market where there are no contingencies because they're either cash or they're pre-underwritten approval. All they need is a home inspection and clear title. And so how strong you want to be. So that really depends on your strategy with your agent. What you'll need to submit your offer. So if you're going to write, you've got all these things figured out. The next thing is you want to include your loan letter, whatever loan letter you're using. Hopefully you're doing a pre-underwritten approval or something that's like a pre-approval. The next thing is a lot of agents will ask you to write a buyer letter. Those can help in some markets. If you don't have them, you may not get an offer accepted. But what I would tell you is be careful, because based on what you put in that offer letter, how you word it, if you put pictures of yourself in it, you may actually end up being in a position where the other party could violate fair housing. So something you should talk about with your agent when you're doing it. The next thing is you want to have proof of funds. You can mark out the account numbers with a black marker, but you need to be able to show that you can purchase, you have the money available. If the money is a gift from family, then you could easily have them prove they have the money and that it's seasoned, and have them mark out the account numbers and even the names on the account, but show something that shows you have the money. The next thing is you want to have a copy of the earnest money deposit and that the money is ready to be deposited. A lot of people will give me a check and say, oh, well, make sure you don't deposit it for 10 days. That could be a problem if you never actually get the check deposited and the contract says it has to be there within 5 days. You could violate the contract and state law because of how you handle your EMD. The next thing is be careful not to miss initials or signatures on the contract. You want to make sure when the contract goes over, you have things set up so that they have everything they need to ratify when they receive it. And the next thing is that you want to make sure that you make an offer that is something that will stand out and doesn't have any mistakes, to make sure that they have everything they need to sign off and say yes. So all of those processes and things that we've gone through and talked about, it's something that if you follow and you strategize with your agent, you'll have a much greater chance of getting the offer. The biggest piece of advice I could give you is listen to your agent. The next thing in step 5 we're going to cover is going to be home inspections and how to choose a home inspector and what other inspections you may elect to have in a purchase. If it's a rural property, you may have well and septic. You have an older roof, you may have a roof inspection or a roof cert. So we're going to talk about all those things in the next video. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of these videos in the future, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you the next time.